Welcome to the Soul Science Nutrition Podcast, where you'll discover that when it comes to your health, you're so much more powerful than you've been led to believe. And now, your host. She's a holistic nutrition and lifestyle coach, chef, author, and yogi, Christine O'Casey.
Hello, and welcome to the Soul Science Nutrition Podcast. I'm Christine O'Casey. Thanks so much for tuning in today. On today's show, I sit down with my friend and colleague from my culinary school days, Tito Dudley, or Chef T. Chef T is a celebrity chef, actor, fitness specialist, and natural bodybuilder. For the past 25 years, Tito has been a passionate advocate for healthy living after beating cancer at the age of 15. Tito's journey opened his eyes to the healing powers of natural foods, a consistent exercise routine, faith, and community. He's the founder of Simple Eats, a company dedicated to helping people stay healthy with simple, healthy meals. You can learn more about Tito at his Instagram handle, Official Chef T. You can also check out his website, simpleeats.com, and tune into his podcast, SEWCT, Simple Eats with Chef T. Tito's mission to educate people about the importance of healthy living is a powerful testament to all the beautiful realizations gathered throughout his journey from cancer fighter to cancer survivor. I hope you enjoy today's show. Hey, Tito, welcome to the podcast. It's so good to see you again.
Christine, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
Tito, your passion for nutrition and fitness and health really began at a young age. I would just love if you could just tell us about that journey.
The journey, like you said, started at the age of 15. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease at the time, and I was in high school, and it was definitely a huge shift in my life. I grew up in church. I attended a lot of outreach and missionary trips. So I continued that during my whole time of diagnosis and chemotherapy for the 6 months. We actually went out to Russia during that time to help orphans. My situation became also a rewarding situation for younger kids. A horrific diagnosis that, yes, it was scary and frightening, but I basically used that as a way to inspire others at a young age. I got into bodybuilding, I got into fitness, got into personal training. The cancer was sort of like this gateway that kind of opened up doors and inspired me to become a person that can inspire others to live a healthier lifestyle through whatever that means for them, because everyone's lifestyle is different. Everyone's mindset is different. Everyone's physical mentality, spirituality is all different. And it's knowing how to find that within themselves. And you harness that to move forward through life and see all the opportunities there are for them.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Yeah. So you went on to explore one of your passions, which was natural bodybuilding. Can you share with us how that played a part in your healing journey?
I was always fascinated with bodybuilding at a young age. I was fascinated more so not about the aesthetics of like getting up on stage and showing your body, but I always saw it as sort of like an art. So I gravitated to that, and bodybuilding became sort of my temple, a place where I would go, especially during my fight for when I was going through cancer, a place where I would go and kind of let loose mentally and physically and even spiritually. It will be sort of my place where I would focus on myself, use that moment to meditate. I know everyone has their own form of way of meditating or connecting to God or higher power, however you're looking at it. And that was sort of my place of connection. And I harnessed that to really get through those hard times, those moments in my life where I felt like I was either, struggling or not pushing forward and stuff like that,
Such a huge awareness for the importance of mindset, at such a young age. And I think these days, mindset is kind of really where the action is in terms of being able to navigate all the issues around health, all the fears and concerns around health, right? So in
Yeah.
the work that you do, what inspires you to keep going?
That's a great question. I think the world inspires me. I think a lot of things, a lot of chronic issues we're seeing or have seen really stems from lifestyle, I think.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say 100%, but
right.
a huge portion of it, I believe, stems from lifestyle. I think just seeing the world from the outside looking in is sort of like my burning fire of why I want to keep pushing forward and why I want to try to innovate with what's going on in the world. How do I, change with the times and be sort of like an inspiration to the younger generation growing up. I look at my niece, my younger niece, 3, 4 years old. I think she's turning 4 in a couple of days. So I envision how she would be, growing up into this world, how she's going to learn. So yeah, people inspire me.
Yeah.
People inspire me. Be the change that I can be in this world.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. Well, certainly your journey and how you harnessed your life and health challenge is an inspiration to so many people who are perhaps struggling with their health or concerns with their health. Now, your lifestyle based media platform, Simple Eats, has a beautiful focus on helping people simplify and actualize healthy eating and healthy living. And you have built a platform on helping people become skillful eaters. Can you explain what you mean, what that looks like in 2020 to be a skillful eater?
Sure. I really got inspired when I read in the creator for Whole Foods, who kind of like started the whole thing. And in there, I love how he articulated skillful eaters. And I was like, wow, that's exactly what I'm trying to do.
Yes.
I'm not trying to tell someone you can't eat what you're eating, but I'm trying to tell someone if you eat a certain way, you can better your lifestyle in the long run. It's kind of like investing. You can either invest now and slowly grow, compound interest, get your bank account big when you retire, however you want to look at it. And I see that as nutrition too at the same time. You start early, hopefully long term, you'll have a better lifestyle.
Yes.
I mean, there's obviously there's a lot of things we can't predict, that's out of our control. But the one thing we can actually take control of is what we pick up and put in our mouth. Look, I mean, when I got into bodybuilding, and bodybuilding is extreme in terms of like calculating your caloric intake,
Yes.
your macros, and I'm not looking for the average person to do that. It is challenging, but if you get to the point of doing it, I think it's a great challenge. And one of the things in life that I as growing up, I always like challenging myself with stuff that I didn't like. I see challenges different than maybe most people see challenges. Challenges can either bring the best out of you or it could bring the worst. And I always try to go for the best.
Yeah. So from cancer survivor to natural bodybuilder, fitness specialist, and natural food chef, you've worn a lot of hats. And in your pursuit of supporting folks to adopt and live a healthy lifestyle, can you reflect back and share what has been the most inspirational experience that you have been personally involved in to date?
I think all the opportunities I've had has been an amazing inspiration to myself. I mean, cooking for celebrities is, that's cool. That's great. But I think when I cooked for First Ascent organization, which deals with cancer patients, fighters and survivors, was a combination of the two. It was inspirational and challenging, simply because it was definitely inspiring for me as a survivor to see other survivors that are out there, all walks of life, who are either dealing with or had dealt with what I've gone through.
Yeah.
And it was very healing for me when I did cook for them, because I have never ever thought about going to any sort of groups after my diagnosis. So
Okay.
it just really touched my heart. And it was inspiring. It was really inspiring for me to see their strength, their struggle, and sharing my story along with them, really just opened my eyes up and just reminded me that, as human beings, we're all connected,
Yeah.
right? And we're all dealing with something. We're all struggling. We're all trying to navigate ourselves through life. We're all trying to create our own story, leave our mark, inspire others, right? And
Yes. Thank you.
there are hard moments that we all deal with, whether it's cancer, whether it's diabetes, obesity, whatever chronic issue that someone is facing or dealing with. I think it was just a really good reminder that you're not alone, right?
Yeah. And when we're struggling with metabolic disease, food health issues, it can be very isolating.
Yeah,
And I think to your point, that food in the way, particularly in the way that you have inspired people around it, is it's about connection. It's this very human connection, right? It's connected to
absolutely.
so many things. I mean, for one, it's an outlet for creativity, for you, for sure, but it's also this, pathway to self-empowerment and when it comes to taking care of yourself. So it's a very human thing. That's always kind of stuck out with me, going to becoming a chef and everything.
Yeah,
It's no other species has the opportunity, or the luxury, I should say, to actually
sure.
get really super conscious about food in this area. And I love that about the work that you've done. So yeah, it's about connection for sure.
Sure, sure. I mean, food is like music. It holds emotion. It connects you
Mm.
to your childhood,
Mm-hmm.
and those stories behind it and stuff like that. I think the hardest part with me with just cooking for First Ascents was just dealing with the stories afterwards. Some people, you know, unfortunately passed on
Sure.
because they didn't make it, or their cancer came back. So a lot
Yes.
of that over time just was very hard to hear and deal with. Very similar to, I always compare it to, like, someone out in the field in the military. You develop like brother and sisterhood with
Mm.
those that you can familiarize yourself with. And when you see them leave or pass away or something happens, you feel that connection even more. So
Yeah.
that right there is definitely emotionally was the hardest part for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So your film, your award-winning indie film that you made some years back, The United States of Atrophy. So I
Yeah.
rewatched that recently, and what came through is at least how it landed for me. And I'd be curious to know, retrospectively, when you look back at that film, what came through obviously was the incredible focus on the nutrition and the physical rigor, of it in terms of the transformation. But the essence of the film that I got was that it was so much more about emotional and sort of heart driven, true grit came from this heart motivation that you had for your family and for your brother, right? So I'm
Mm.
curious, like looking back on that, given that we're talking kind of about mindset and emotions and true inspiration around health, what are your takeaways retrospectively of that period in your life?
It was definitely driven by family for sure.
Yeah.
Emotional connection, love. I wanted to really show, one, what it takes to get the results at that extreme level, but
Yes.
what it just takes to just get results in general.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be extreme as bodybuilding, but you have to put in the work.
Yeah.
Like you can't just sit at home and hope that something is just going to fall in your lap and it's just going to do its thing, and you're just going to get better. Being stagnant doesn't bring results. And I
Mm-hmm.
think connecting with the right people, whether it's family or friends in a community, can be extremely healthy mentally, physically, and even spiritually.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it reminds me sort of like, I don't know if you ever read the book Outliers.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So there's a part in there, I believe. I hope I'm not mixing up books, but I
Malcolm
believe there's a
Gladwell.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. There's a part in there he speaks about in a group from Italy that was in Pennsylvania, a part of Pennsylvania, and how they didn't eat the greatest healthy diet that we're used to eating
Yes.
nowadays, or like it wasn't like a keto diet. It
Yes.
wasn't like this fag, like it wasn't any of that. It was just their focus was really on community, and
Yeah.
because they were so focused on community and that connection,
Mm-hmm.
they live a very long life,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And
I
that just
think it's
shows
key.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, that just shows you how important it is. Community is. And your community doesn't have to be like this ginormous, it could be a few people that you trust and love and you're in the same level, or maybe not on the same level. Maybe they could be on a higher level to help bring you up, whatever it is.
Yeah. Thank you. So speaking of that, getting support, one of the things that I know that cancer survivors can be grappling with is sort of, I want to call it PTSD, but a form of PTSD where every time they get sick or they have a cold or we're in a pandemic and we hear about, risk factors for this, that, and the other. I have some clients who are very fearful, of the diagnosis coming back, et cetera. What do you do, or what have you done, or what guidance would you have for people? Because you've worked with a lot in this space.
Sure. And you know what? I've dealt with a lot of that stuff, even in my early days
Okay.
of diagnosis, walking into the hospital and, having, just reminiscence of like what I went through, or if I get sick, the same thing.
Yeah.
Feeling like, it's coming back.
Yeah.
Honestly, cannabis has been very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For those that want to go that route. I felt like it really, I'm not going to say it cures it, it takes it away, but it helps with taking the edge off and calming you down and relaxing you.
Mm-hmm.
I think being active is also very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout my life, even throughout my diagnosis, I have always been active. And,
Yes.
creating those silent moments of just being with yourself, meditating, praying,
Mm-hmm.
and has been helpful as well. If you can silence that noise and be present, it can really help to refocus your mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I believe. And all of that
Yes.
has been, extremely helpful for myself. And going back to community, talking about it,
Uh-huh.
being a
Yeah.
part of groups, like I said, by default, I was a chef who cooked for a cancer group, but benefited from it because I was cooking for a group that dealt with the same thing I dealt with. So if you're able to connect with, whoever's listening, they can look up First Descent's cancer organization, and I'm not sure what they're what's going on now with them because of the pandemic. But if you can find even groups online, I think would be helpful. Staying active, finding groups to communities that you could connect with similarities. It's extremely helpful. To navigate and staying active doesn't mean you have to go to the gym. Going out on walks, trail walks, stuff like that, gets the body moving and circulating, gets the blood pumping, and, you're getting energy just from doing that. And it helps to refocus, those negative thoughts that you're probably dealing with. Yeah.
So you've become an expert on the use of cannabinoids in health, but seriously, it's a huge field. Tell us about what's one common myth. Let's say someone listening is like, yeah, I've heard of that. I'm not really sure what that is. What's one common myth about cannabis, CBD, et cetera, that you work to dispel when you start talking to people about the potential healing properties?
I think the common myth is probably the typical what we've always heard of, is the drug is going to get you high and do crazy things, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it really isn't. If you look at cannabis like wine or food, you'll notice that each strain is different. Like spices, each spice is different. Each spice holds different nutritional value to it and purpose. The same thing with cannabis. Cannabis can either it can either give you a little bit of energy, or it could bring you down some. And it really depends on the purpose, what is your specific purpose? You know,
Yes.
for Teresa's treatment with her chemo, they suggested her using cannabis. I think there's a lot of great studies that are coming out there. It's still in the early days, but there are a lot of great studies that are coming out there, you know, teaching people the purpose of cannabis outside of just recreational.
Yes.
And I mean, that's great. You can, you know, have cannabis however you want, but I think it's also important to really educate people on the importance of using it even separate from that. And honestly, I only got into cannabis when my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer.
Okay.
And I started making my own oils. That was honestly the first time and that was 5 years ago.
Okay.
So it's early for me too.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating.
but I am extremely fascinated with the whole endocannabinoid system of the, you know, the whole discovery of that, on how, you know, cannabis can help create homeostasis. It could be something that could be implemented into someone's lifestyle versus giving them like an opioid that can just cause more damage. So I definitely think it's something to consider.
Yes.
With all the anxiety that's out there.
Yeah.
But obviously always, you know, check with your local, whoever your practitioner.
What are some good resources that have helped you?
CB1 Capital is, I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name. That's a great company. They also talk about investments too in the whole cannabis world, but they always have, if you follow their Twitter handler, you'll find that they always post in some great articles with some reputable websites and stuff like that. CB1 Capital.
Great. I'll put that in the notes.
Yeah, CB1 Capital is great. Leafly.com is also great because they actually break down each strain and give you their story, their nutritional value, and why you should be using it, which is really cool.
Excellent.
It literally is just like wine. It's kind of like wine tasting, but with cannabis.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I love it. Yeah, I mean, I really do think we sort of need to overcome this misconception about its use and look at what the research is starting to really say about the medicinal value. I think it's really a great move in the direction of fully understanding the benefits or the untapped benefits of more natural plant-based medicine. So I think we're going in the right direction with that. But let's get back to food. And I'd be really curious to know if you could share with us, you know, some tips, your best guidance for people just trying to get started here, or perhaps just find some new motivation or inspiration for, you know, being in the kitchen and cooking healthy for themselves, especially during these crazy times.
Keeping it simple as possible is key. I always find simplicity to be the best easy goal to start out with before trying to do like any sort of like fancy sort of recipe for yourself. And you'll find that because you're busy, maybe kids are at home, dogs, whatever your situation is during this pandemic, you want to keep it simple. And when you keep it simple, it's less stressful. And if you're able to just start out even with just one meal a day, to make that one meal a day the healthiest meal, I think you're on a road to better health for yourself. Beautiful. I don't think you have to like really focus on trying to get every single meal in. And this is for adults that's just trying to, you know, just kind of like start out and just, you know, they're trying to figure their way and navigate their way through life during this crazy time. Yes. You know, pick one meal and make it the healthiest. You know, that's simple. And from there, try to build upon that, create sort of like a repetition for yourself. Mm-hmm. If you're doing one meal for the next 2-3 weeks and you feel like that's working, aim to do that for the second meal. Then next thing you know, maybe all your meals are exactly where it's supposed to be. You know, 80-20 rule has been like a great rule to follow. I think as you continue to educate yourself, get older, and just want to stay healthy, that ratio starts to change and lean towards more of a healthier approach.
That's great.
And that 20 starts to be maybe 5.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I find for myself. You know, as you just get older, man, you just like, do I really want to eat that and deal with the consequences tomorrow or the next few days on how my body feels and have to recover? You get older, your recovery time is insane.
Yeah, it's this funny thing. They say, "Oh, my body forgave me for that." I'm like, "Yeah, but the body never forgets. That's the thing about the body; it doesn't forget. Eventually, there's some feedback that you're not really excited about."
Exactly.
What's the non-negotiable tool in your self-care kit these days? Speaking of caring for our bodies and our minds,
movement has always been a key for me. Got to move the body. I always go back to the lymphatic system and how that works. It works with movement. If you don't move, your lymphatic system can't really work. You can't get rid of like the toxins that are in your body the way you should be. And movement is key. Absolutely. Yeah. It doesn't have to be some vigorous CrossFit workout, or high intensity workout. Everyone is of different ages, different lifestyle, different physical ability. So I think it's kind of like, how walking into a supermarket can be overwhelming with all these produce and companies, trying to sell you stuff. Same thing with workouts. It could be overwhelming because there's so much out there. But if you stick to the simplest thing as just like 5-minute, 10-minute walk, or a bike ride, or if you're in your house and you want to put on a YouTube video of salsa lesson and you want to do some dancing, it's still movement, right?
Yeah.
Movement is key. Now, within that, you'll start to find, kind of like food and culture, you start to find what you gravitate to, different spices. So the same thing, different exercises, different movement that works well for you. And you stick with that and you just build a routine off of that.
So let's get personal for a bit. As you look back on the last couple decades as a cancer survivor, what are some strategies that you think have really served you when it comes to staying healthy and overcoming your diagnosis?
As a survivor, I think it's really important to know that life has changed, and you want to, you don't want to introduce any sort of bad habits, if there were any, in terms of your health after your cancer treatment. You want to maintain a healthy diet for yourself and keep introducing foods that it will continue to build your immune system. When I went through my treatment, and I remember telling this to a friend, I went through my treatment, and I can't speak for everyone, but hopefully my story can be an inspiration for those. I got into bodybuilding. So if I look back at like my own personal data of myself and my lifestyle, I went through 6 months of aggressive chemotherapy. Then from there, I worked out through that entire time and continued to work out, got into bodybuilding. And now if anybody knows like bodybuilding or any sort of like competition, there's always some sort of fasting or some sort of restriction on your eating intake. And there's a lot of movement. So I created for over 2 decades of like a little over 2 decades of a lot of movement, a lot of fasting, a lot of reintroducing of certain foods, limiting my intake of any sort of processed foods at a really high scale. So in my head, I'm thinking that serves some sort of purpose.
Sure.
Right? That serves some so there's an importance to, I think, fasting, which many people are talking about now.
That's right.
The whole 8-hour fasting, whatever, fast within. And I've done that. The keto diet I've done back in like the early 2000s. And that's still like, when you look at the keto diet, when you look at any sort of diet, there is a sort of fasting that is taking place. You're taking an individual from their everyday lifestyle of eating to this certain style of eating, which is, either decreasing in caloric intake by default because you're following their program, or changing up foods, whatever that case is. So I think there's a big importance, whether it's cancer or not, of implementing fasting, implementing movement, into your lifestyle.
I think one thing, I know is that our bodies work so much better when we find a rhythm to our daily life, you know, the nervous system loves routine. The nervous system loves sort of a consistent, you know, as much as we can in 2020, eating and waking and sleeping and moving schedule, right?
Yes.
It's just kind of how we are able to more easily find that homeostasis. So to your point, I do think that fasting or restrictive window eating, however you want to look at that, there's certainly enough research that shows that, you know, you give your body a break, essentially, you know, and that makes a lot of sense, I think, even at the most fundamental level, because most of what people do when they are really gotten to the point where they're struggling with a healthy lifestyle is there is no rhythm or routine. You know, it's catch can, it's overwhelm, analysis paralysis, you know, any combination of that. So I think to your point, you know, once again, we come back to your journey, which is really you got to kind of dig deep and, you know, for this level of inspiration, because this is work, to your point. Taking care of ourselves is important work. Shouldn't be horrible work, but it's important work, right? Yeah. It requires intention. It requires goal setting, right? So I think to your point, the bodybuilding, yes, is relative to everybody else. That's a very extreme venue for learning about health and your body. But modern day living, we're completely disconnected from our bodies. Is it any wonder that, you know, we're faced with so much symptom and ailment, right?
No, I definitely agree. You definitely become more sensitive to how your body feels, for sure.
Yeah. It's huge. It's huge. So, if you could have a billboard with an inspirational message to help people on their health journey, Chef Tito says what?
Be who you are, love yourself, and continue to maneuver through life knowing that you're not alone.
That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. And has faith played a huge role in your journey?
Faith is always a huge role in my journey, has always been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Never disconnect your faith.
Yeah. And so if one more last question here, what's the most important thing you've learned in life thus far?
Life is always changing. You got to be prepared to mold with the change. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, if you were in my shoes, is there any question maybe that I should have asked you?
I think we covered a lot. I definitely hope whoever's listening in is inspired and continue to make the changes in their lifestyle and be the inspiration for themselves and others in their community. Yes. I hope they get that from this podcast for sure.
Okay. Well, it's been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. A gift to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Keep doing all the beautiful work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine.
All right.
It was a pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.